Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Carlin Cymraeg for session 2 of the Welsh second language. This afternoon's session will be run by Miss Childs from Mountain Ash Comprehensive School. The session will last approximately 45 minutes and Miss Childs will go through the relevant subject content. If you have any questions, please use the question and answer section and we'll endeavour to answer them during the session. This session will be recorded with the recording and any resources uploaded to the e-sgol website in the Carlin Cymraeg section. Over to you, Miss Giles. Diolch.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Prynhawn pawb. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the Welsh second language course. So today we are revising key question words based on graph and chart style questions. So graph and chart style questions could come up in your speaking or your reading and writing. So then we're going to prepare on how to answer a Unit 2 style graph-based question, so how to discuss it in terms of speaking. Then we're going to answer a Unit 3 based graph question and also a chart-based question. So your first task, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to translate some of these keywords into English. So remember, a lot of the questions in the exam are in Welsh only. I've put some of the options here. Some of you may be able to challenge yourself and just translate them into English yourself. So chart sounds very similar to English. Graph, again, sounds very similar to English. Here's the options here. Canlyniadau, it could be a new one. So remember, if you don't know the English translations, then you will struggle answering the questions. Mwyafrif, mwy, Clai, canran, poblogaeth, quarter, think back to time in year 7, quarter wedi, hanner, so hanner wedi. Okay, dive in 2 more minutes, and if you finish, you might be able to write down any more question words that you remember related to graph-based questions. Okay, so remember, graph-based questions could come up in your Unit 2 speaking, or it could come up in your reading and writing exams. The reason for that, they want to introduce numeracy skills into the Welsh paper now. And I find a lot of people is not understanding the graph or answering the question, is understanding the Welsh vocab. Okay, so if we say 1 minute, 1 more minute. Remember, type in the chat if you have any questions. Okay, and always think which one sounds similar to English, chart, graph, or do they sound like in English? And a lot of these keywords will be coming up in the questions that we're answering today as well. Okay, if we go through the atebion, you're more than welcome to type in your marks out of 10 in the chat. So the first one, chart is chart in English. Graph is graph in English. Canlyniadau, that could be a new one for us. It means results. So the examiner could say, ydych chi'n cytuno gyda canlyniadau? Do you agree with the results? Mwyafrif is majority. Clai is less. Mwy is more. Canran is percentage. Poblogaeth, popular. Quarter, quarter, hanner, half. So you might remember some of these words here, 9 and 10, from going over time in previous years. So you're more than welcome to send your answers in the chat. Okay, so Diane, I think someone has achieved 10 mas 10, 10 out of 10, ardderchog. Okay, so nawr your next task, I want you to cyfieithwch y brawddegau i'r Saesneg. I want you to translate these sentences into English. So these could be maybe key, they might ask you in the exam to maybe decide if the statements are true or false. They might ask you to answer the question. So this is why we are translating these today, because if you don't understand the keywords, then you will struggle to answer the questions. So I've given you some help here in the help box. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to try and translate as many of these as possible into English. So my rugby, very similar to English, and boblogaidd. If we have a look in the help box, poblogaidd is popular. Gyda merched. Always think of the school toilets in school. You'll have merched and bechgyn. So hopefully that's an old-fashioned way of understanding the difference. My Hannah. Okay, we just had Hannah, y bechgyn, and chwarae hockey. What does hockey sound like in English? Remember, type in the chat if you have any questions. Okay, we've just had a question through, and they've asked, what is bechgyn and merched? So merched is the Welsh word for girls in Welsh, and bechgyn is the word for boys in Welsh. So always think of the school toilets. I know it's quite old-fashioned, but some of the time in some schools you'll have merched on the toilets and bechgyn. So remember, merched is girls, bechgyn is boys. Remember, type in the chat if you have any questions. Okay, if we say 2 munud now, 2 more minutes. Then my Hannah is on the graph, in the help box, so half. Merched we just had, hoffi, so think of opinions, and glampio. Glampio, what does that sound like in English? Remember, type in the chat if you have any more questions or need any help. Mae 4 bechgyn yn mynd o wyliau. Mae 4 bechgyn yn mynd o wyliau. So I'll give you a clue for gwyliau. Spine, frank. That's a topic you may have covered. Okay, if we say 1 munud now, 1 more minute. So ydych chi'n cytuno? Ydych chi'n cytuno? So ydych chi'n is exactly the same as oed ti'n. And we just had canlyniadau, which is up here, results. And if you do finish, have a think, how could you answer question 5? So what phrases could you use to answer question 5? Okay, so if we go dros yr atebion. So the first one, rugby is popular with the girls. So remember, merched is girls, poblogaidd, popular. Then we have half of the boys are playing hockey. Mae Hannah bechgyn yn chwarae hockey, so hockey is English. Mae Hannah merched yn hoffi glampio. Half of the girls like glamping. So glampio could be a new word for us is glamping. Mae 4 bechgyn yn mynd o wyliau. A quarter of the boys are going on holidays. And finally, the last one, ydych chi'n cytuno gyda canlyniadau? Do you agree with the results? So the extension was, how could you answer that question? And someone typed in the chat saying, rydw i'n cytuno or rydw i'n anghytuno. So that's a brilliant way of answering that question. So remember, type in the chat if you want to share your results. I can see now that some of you have achieved pimp mas pimp, 5 out of 4, 5 out of 5, which is brilliant to see. So ardderchog, gwaith ardderchog, da iawn. Okay, so now we are going to have a look at a graph-based question. I want you to think now, have a think or type in the chat, what beth my graph and dangos? What is the graph showing? Okay, so you have some information on the graph. It says 40 young people. Read the information. So type in the chat if you think you know what the graph is saying. Doesn't have to be in Welsh at this stage. So what is the graph saying? Read my graph and dangos. Okay, so someone has typed in that the graph is showing the different types of trips that people would like to go on. So Diane, you are correct. The local sports club want to arrange a trip, and here's the possible choices. So the possible choices, they could go glampio or Iaith, glamping close to the beach, hotel ieuenctid, so a hostel ieuenctid, a youth hostel, wrth y mynyddoedd by the mountains, and Canolfan Earth, so the Earth Centre in Cardiff. Okay, so as we mentioned already, a graph-based question could come up in your Unit 2 exam. At the moment, the WGCSE have said to your schools, you can either sit your 1 speaking, Unit 1 speaking, which is to do with the video, or Unit 2. So I know some schools have just opted for Unit 2 for those of you in Year 11. So what you would have to do is refer to the graph. So you could refer to the graph by saying, "En a graph," and then discuss what the graph is showing. So my 20 y cant o bobl yn hoffi glampio. So 10% of people like glamping. If you want to sit on the fence and want to give a more general answer referring to the graph, you would say my average, and you could say yn hoffi and pick out from the text. And my llai less than, and give a number of people who don't like something from the text. So as long as you refer to the graph, you will get a mark. So what I want you to do for 2 minutes, I want you to write 5 sentences about the graph. So I want you to refer to the graph by using these 4 different patterns. Then after you would say that in your speaking, remember you'll get marks for communicating with each other. So you could ask the question, o't ti'n cytuno, and discuss the results of the graph. So you could say, rydw i'n cytuno, rydw i'n anghytuno, what does your friend think? Okay, so I want you to write 5 sentences referring to the graph. You could agree and disagree with the results. And as I've mentioned already, you'll get marks for communicating with each other. So always ask a question, try and ask a question. O't ti'n cytuno? You might want to say, beth mae graph yn dangos? What does the graph show? Okay, so if we say 2 minutes, 2 more minutes. Remember, you could type in your answers in the chat. Okay, I just had an excellent question through. Do I need to just stick to these patterns in the exam? No, you don't have to stick. As long as the phrase makes sense. So maybe the teachers in your school have taught you an all graph according to the graph. It doesn't make sense, or dywedodd the graph said, you will get marks. So you have to always stick to these phrases. Okay, so remember, type in the chat if you want to share your answers. So if we say 1 minute, 1 more minute. So remember, you would speak these out. You wouldn't have time for a script in the exam. So it's really useful to start learning the patterns now. And you'll also get more marks if you are changing your person, changing your tenses. So as I've suggested here, you are showing off your 3rd person in the present tense. And always remember to show off your patterns. So don't just stick to a graph. This is why I've given you a few patterns to discuss in the exam. Okay, so you might want to sound these sentences out at home to practice your pronunciation. And remember, on the day, you will have 3 choices to choose from. So 3 different themes, and they switch throughout the day. Sometimes they wouldn't have a graph-based question on the paper, but remember, you will not be able to hit the A's or an A stars if you do have choose one with a graph or stimulus with a graph and you haven't discussed it. Okay, so we are going to move on, but someone just typed in a really good response. So they said, yn y graph, mae 10 y cant yn hoffi glampio ger y traeth. So in the graph, 10% of people like glamping, which is brilliant, ardderchog. Okay, so here we are now moving on to a task darkline, a reading task, which could come up in your reading and writing exams, okay? So they've given you a graph, which we've gone through already. So remember, they are asking where would they like to go on holidays or on the weekend, and they have 40 people, 40 young people are in the club. Bechgyn is in gwyrdd, boys is in green, merched is in melon, yellow, okay? And they've had 3 choices where to go. Glampio, Gerda Traeth, glamping by the beach. Hostel, Ieuenctid, a youth hospital by the mountains, and Canolfan Earth, so the Earth Centre. So you would have to answer these questions in the exam. So the first 2 questions you need to answer is rhaid I chi grynhoi y canlyniadau ar y staff in a club. So you need to summarise the results for staff in the club by llenwch y canlyniadau. So we had the word llenwch last lesson, which is fill in the graph below. So you need to read the graph and fill in the phrases, okay? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer this question. So the first statement you have, mae Hannah y merched eisiau mynd I. So Hannah is here, so half, and we've had merched earlier, half of the girls want to go to, so you need to look for half of the girls, and also where on the graph in Welsh would they go to. So you need to look for half of the girls out of the total number of girls, and you need to choose where they would like to go. And remember, we always need to write in Welsh. And the second gap you need to fill in, mae hostel ieuenctid and poblogaeth gyda someone and unig. So my hostel ieuenctid, we've already said, is a youth hostel, so we'd look in this one here, only these 2 bars. And poblogaeth is here, popular with someone, unig is only. So which is the youth hostel popular with? Is it with the bechgyn, which is gwyrdd, green, or merched, which is melon? Okay, so 1 minute. Remember, type in the chat if you have any questions. So it's all about skimming and scanning through the graph. And remember, always write in Welsh. You will not get any marks in the exam for writing in English. Okay, so if we sum it ymlaen, the second part of the question, it says, ticiwch, cywir or neu anghywir. Okay, so ticiwch, if you remember, is tick, cywir is true, anghywir is false. So some of the staff have noticed facts about the results, but they are not always correct. So your task is to darllen y datganiadau, read the statements, and decide if these statements are true or false. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer these questions. So remember, it says ticiwch. So if you, for example, filled in the box or maybe circled the box or put a question mark, even if it was correct, they mark it incorrect. Okay, you need to follow the instructions and put a tick. So it says mae llai, so llai is here, so less than, quarter is here, so less than quarter of the merched. Merched we've had before. Eisiau mynd I hostel ieuenctid. So you're looking at hostel ieuenctid, and is it less than a quarter of the girls would like to go there? Okay, then the next one, dydi glampio So did you glampio ddim yn apelio at pobl ifanc, okay? So we had the word glampio earlier, which means glamping. So glamping doesn't appeal to the young people. So you'd have to look at glampio. Is it poblogaidd, popular, or ddim yn poblogaidd isn't popular? Okay, so remember, just 2 ticks in the exam. If you don't know, have a guess. Otherwise, you're giving marks away, and it's a 50-50 chance. Okay, so if we go dros yr atabion. So mae hanner merched eisiau mynd I. Half the girls would like to go to the hostel ieuenctid. Okay, so if you added up all of the girls, and it would be hostel ieuenctid, then my hostel ieuenctid and poblogaidd gyda. So you'd look for hostel ieuenctid, and if you have a look, this green side is higher than this side, so it's popular with the bechgyn, with the boys. Okay, then the first statement is cywir, and the second statement is anghywir. Okay, because a lot of people do want to go glamping. So you're more than welcome, that's like with 4 marks, to type in your answers, your marks in the chat. So it's brilliant to see that people have achieved pedwar mas o pedwar, 4 out of 4, so da iawn, ardderchog, brilliant. Okay, so now I want you to meddylwch, think whether, can anyone tell me for 1 funud, beth ydy gwahaniaeth rhwng rheswm syml a rheswm estynedig? What's the difference between a simple and extended reason? Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 funud, 2 minutes to type in the chat, have a think, look at my examples here. Okay, and it's brilliant to see that people has also been typing the answers in. So look at my examples, achos mae'n hoel. And then I said, achos yn fy marni, mae gwyliau yn wych. Achos mae gwyliau yn hoel. So remember, type in the chat if you think you understand the difference, or maybe you can think of your own examples. Da iawn, I just had a brilliant explanation that's come through in the chat. So simple reason is a 1-word answer, which is brilliant. So as you can see in my answer on the screen, I've said achos mae'n wych, achos mae'n ddiflas. And an extended answer is a more in-depth answer. So da iawn, you are on the right lines. So an extended reason is basically because plus an opinion or plus some sort of idiom, for example. So because holidays are great. So instead of just saying a 1-word answer because it's fun, because it's boring, you are using a more developed opinion, which is what the examiners will be looking for in the exam. So I haven't just said achos mae'n hoel because it's fun, achos mae gwyliau yn hoel because holidays are great. And here I've added in an idiom, achos yn fy marni mae gwyliau yn wych. In my opinion, holidays are great. Okay. The reason why we've gone through that is because the examiner is now asking you to express your opinion about where you would like to go in the future. Okay, so part E in order to tripiau, which one of the trips, so be careful, is 1 in the question, 1 in the question, and 1 mark for the answer. So if you wrote down 2 of the trips, then you would lose the mark. So you need to write down 1 of the trips here. Ble hoffech chi ddewis? So which of the trips would you like to choose? And you need to give 2 reasons why. So you need to give 2 extended reasons. If you said achos mae'n wych, achos mae'n hoel, you would not be able to give again all 4 marks because it's just a 1-word answer. So what I want you to do is have a think. So first of all, choose one. So you might want to choose maybe glampio, gero, traeth, so glamping, and then you need to give an extended reason why you would like to go glamping. So you could say achos mae glampio yn, and add on an adjective, so wych, ddiddorol, and then also use this one here, or you could think of one yourself, because achos yn fy marn mae glampio yn, because in my opinion, glamping is an ateb the question. So un funud now, 1 more minute to try and answer this question. So remember, you could type in the chat an example of your answers. Remember, if you have any questions, just type in the chat. Diane, and someone said, is it, an extended reason is more specific to the question. So Diane, so achos mae wych, anything could be great, but you're actually being specific. You're saying something specifically that maybe glamping is great, a youth hostel is great. Okay, so that's a really brilliant one as well. Okay, so if we go to the next task, okay, so the next task after that, they've given you a statement and you need to agree or disagree with the statement, okay? So the statement says, mae gwyliau yn Nghymru yn wych. So holidays in Wales are great. Mae digon I wneud yma. There's lots to do here ac mae llawer o bethau I weld. And there's lots of things to see. So that is a 3-mark question, okay? So you get 1 mark for either agreeing or disagreeing with the question, and 2 marks for giving an extended reason for your answer, okay? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, 2 minutes to try and answer this question. So the exam board, I always think is better to use the phrases rydw i'n cytuno or rydw i'n anghytuno, okay? Because a lot of the time, if you have a look up here, cytuno is in the question, so you know you're always going to spell it correct. Rydw i'n cytuno. You could technically say did we ddim yn cytuno, I don't agree, but anghytuno is disagree. They would give you marks for saying ydw, nac ydw, yes or no. The only thing to be careful of is there are different types of yeses in Welsh. So if the question was oes chwaer gyda ti, do you have a sister, you'd answer with oes or nac oes. So if you mixed up the yeses in Welsh, with ydych you're always using ydw and nac ydw. So if you wrote down oes, even though oes is yes, is the wrong type of yes with the question. So I would personally always stick to rydw i'n cytuno or rydw i'n anghytuno, but the exam board would give you marks for that. They'd also give you marks for saying some idioms. So you could say yn bendant, definitely, hebnos, and sicr, certainly, and of course. So they'd also give you marks for those ones as well. Then the other 2 marks, as I've mentioned already, they would give you marks for using extended reason. So you're being specific, you're not using a 1-word answer. You might want to recycle some of the vocab from the statement. So achos mae gwyliau yn Nghymru yn, because there's lots, because holidays in Wales are. You could might want to change your tenses. So achos hoffwn I fynd somewhere, I'd like to go somewhere on holidays. Okay, another thing to be careful of, if we say un funud now, 1 more minute, another thing to be careful of, sometimes the examiner would put this question over a few lines. So if you, for example, had 1 line with 1 mark next to it, they wouldn't expect you to put I agree and the opinion on 1 line. So if we go back to this one here, so it's clearer. So if you put rydw i'n cytuno and the reasons here, they would not give you these marks because it's in the wrong place. So you need to put rydw i'n cytuno here and then you reason separately on different lines. So be careful of that in the exam because you could lose marks for that. Okay. So always remember for this type of question, try and use extended reasons, so a more specific or in-depth answer, achos plus an opinion most of the time, because it will get you more marks instead of just saying achos mae'n wych, achos mae'n hoel. Okay, so we're now going to move on to another section. So I want you now, I have a list of keywords, and I want to decide if these keyword translations are cywir or anghywir. So I've translated the keywords into English. Are these translations cywir or are they false? If you do finish, I want you to correct the translations. Okay, so for diving, are these translations correct? So put them cywir or are they incorrect? So remember, type in the chat if you have any questions. So if we have a look, ble, where, is that cywir, true, or anghywir, false? Always think C for correct or C for true. Beth, is that when in English? Remember, if it's anghywir, if it's incorrect, then try and translate it into English. Pa is which? Is that cywir or anghywir? Then we have been given some superlatives. So superlatives always end with an AF in Welsh. So oeraf is that hottest. Poethaf is that coldest. So you need to decide if that's cywir or anghywir. If we say un funud now, 1 more minute. Pam, when, so is that cywir or anghywir? Hoffech chi, would you like? Is that cywir or anghywir? Glad, does that mean go? Cywir or anghywir? Gwahaniaeth, difference, is that cywir or anghywir? And finally, mis, does that mean month in English? And decide if it's cywir or anghywir. So the reason why we're going through these today is because the next task we're going over is a grid-based question. Remember, a lot of the questions in the exam are Welsh only. So if you aren't familiar with these keywords, then that's when you'll struggle to access the paper. If I wrote down the questions in English, you'd probably be able to answer it. It's just getting to grasp of the keywords to help you know these questions. Okay, so remember, you can type in the answers in the chat or ask any questions. Okay, if we go dros the atebion. Okay, so ble is where, so it's cywir. Beth is anghywir, and it actually means what. So beth edit enody. What is your name? So pa is which, so it's cywir. Oeraf, think of the weather. Oer is actually coldest. So oer is cold, so oeraf is coldest. Poeth is the opposite, so anghywir, it is hottest. So AF is our ESTs in English, so hottest and coldest. Pam is anghywir, it means why. Hoffech chi is the formal version of hoffeti. So would you like? I think we've seen that today, this lesson as well. Glad, think back to the national anthem. My hen lad fy nhadau, the old country, my old country. So anghywir, false. Gwahaniaeth is a useful phrase, so difference. So they might ask you the difference between two countries. And mis, always think of months of the year is cywir, it means a month. Okay, so we're going to use these phrases now to answer a graph-based question. So type in the chat your answers. I can see 1 or 2 people have typed in that they've managed to get dig mas o dig. That's brilliant to see. So this is a graph-based question which could come up in your reading and writing exams. So it says, beth ydy gwahaniaeth rhwng y temperoedd yn mis Rhagfyr, o gymharu a mis Gorffennaf. So they've given you different countries. And they've asked the question, so what's the temperature differences in these countries between Rhagfyr, December, and Gorffennaf, July, okay? So if you have a look, these are the temperatures in different countries in December, and these are the different differences in Gorffennaf, July, okay? So these are the questions in Welsh, and you need to use the grid in order to answer the questions, okay? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to try and answer these questions using the graph, okay? So the first one, beth ydy boethaf ym mis Awst? So which country is the hottest in August? So you need to look in the August section. Which country is the hottest? So which has the highest temperature? And you need to write down the country. And it's just 1 mark, so they're only expecting a 1-word answer. Then the next one, pa wlad ydy oeraf. We had the word oeraf earlier. So which country is the coldest ym mis Gorffennaf in July? So if you have a look in Gorffennaf, July, and which is the lowest country or the coldest country? So you look for the coldest temperature, slide your finger across and write down. So remember, because it's a 1-mark question, you're only expecting 1-mark answer. Then they say, beth ydy gwahaniaeth o'r Cymraeg ym mis Awst a mis Gorffennaf and Lloegr? So they're asking you, what's the temperature differences between August and July in Lloegr, England? So you need to take 25% away from 10% for number 3. Then rhif 4, beth ydy gwahaniaeth rhwng Cymraeg ym mis Awst a mis Gorffennaf and Australia? So you need to work out the temperature difference between August and July in Australia. So you need to take 40, take away 25 degrees. And remember, I have put a help box here. So boethaf hottest, oeraf coldest, gwahaniaeth difference and hoffwn i fynd. And finally, ble hoffech chi fynd ar wyliau a pham? So where would you like to go on holidays? You don't have to stick to the ones in the graph. So you would say, hoffwn i fynd, I would like to go, and a reason. Remember, it's always best to use an extended reason to support your answer, which we now know today is instead of just giving a 1-word answer, you're using more of a specific reason. So you could say, yn fy marn, my Frank yn wych. In my opinion, France is great. Okay, so remember, type in the chat if you have any questions, or you might want to share some of your answers. And if you do finish, you might want to move on to the extension, which is ydych chi'n cytuno gyda canlyniadau? Do you agree with the results? Okay, if we say un funud now, 1 more minute, and then we will go through some of the answers. So remember, it could talk about, it could be any topic, the graphs could come up. It could be talking about global warming, looking at the temperature differences in global warming. They might change it to results, maybe rugby results from the 6 Nations, and you'd have to work out the differences between the results, who won the most games. It could be true and false answers about it. So we need to start learning a lot of these keywords to answer some of these questions. Okay, so just a few more seconds. And remember, for number 5, because there's 2 marks, they're expecting is usually either 2 sentences or they might ask a reason. So in this case, they are looking for a reason for the 2nd mark. Okay, so if we go through the atebion, so the first one, pa wlad ydy boethaf yn mis Awst. So if we go to Awst, August, and the one with the highest temperature, so type in the chat if you do know, is Australia. So we just have to write down Australia for 1 mark. Then pa wlad ydy oeraf ym mis Gorffennaf. So which country is the coldest in July? So we'd have a look at Gorffennaf, and the coldest one is Lloegr. Then, beth ydy gwahaniaeth rhwng Awst a Gorffennaf and Lloegr? So what is the temperature differences in England between August and July. So we had to take away 25 away from 10, and it is 15. Then we're looking at beth ydy gwahaniaeth rhwng y temperaidd mis Awst and mis Gorffennaf. So looking at Australia this time, so what's the temperature differences? So we took 20 away from 15, and we had 15 degrees. Okay, and remember the last one is 2 marks. Okay, the rest of them is just a 1 mark question only, so they would have only expected 1 word answers. So the last one was, where would you like to go on holidays and why? So remember, they would expect you to say specifically where would you like to go, so hoffwn i fynd I Sbaen, and then you'd expect to give an extended reason. So you could say my Australia and boeth. So hoffwn i fynd I Australia achos my Australia and boeth. And we went over the word boeth earlier, which means hot. Okay, so type in the chat your mark. So it's mas o 6 out of 6. Oh, ddechog, da iawn. I can see a lot of people are achieving 6 mas o 6, 6 out of 6. And one final point before we move on, if you have a look in the questions, ydy and yw are used in the question. So ydy is basically is in English, and it means exactly the same as yw. So which country is the coldest? They mean exactly the same, just one is formal and one is informal. The exam board may use any of these in exam, so I put yw in brackets so you're aware the examiner could use ydy or yw. Okay, so I have put a set of revision words and phrases for you on the PowerPoint, so hopefully you can start revising these words ready for the exam. So remember, a lot of the questions I've mentioned already are in Welsh only. So here are some of the keywords which we've gone over from the lesson. So shot bar is a bar graph. Shot cylch is a pie chart. Grid is grid. A chart is just a chart. Canlyniadau, we've gone over results. Canran is percentage. A few of the others we've gone over. Dros, over, dan, under, so a few new ones that you might want to look at. I've added in some numbers, so we touched upon hanner today, half, quarter, quarter, but there's a few others that the examiners could use if it does come up, or you could use for your speaking as well. Some comparatives I put in, and some common questions which has come up from exam papers. So these are really useful phrases which you could use. So does anyone have any final questions that you'd like to ask before we finish the session? So any questions, just type in the chat. Da iawn, I can see some people has shared their answers as well from the previous task, which is brilliant. Okay, a lot of comparatives are also coming up in exam. So fwy poblogaidd, more popular, llai poblogaidd, mwyaf and leiaf, least and most, are really good phrases that you could use to remember these. So remember, if you have any more final questions, you can type in the chat. Remember, the next session will be next Monday, and we are looking at giving advice and comparing opinions, because that is coming up quite a lot in the exam paper. We'll also be practicing some exam questions. I put the link here, and I believe you'll also be able to click the link at the end of the session. So remember, next Monday, you need to tick Monday, go to Monday, the 29th of November at 4:15 until 5 o'clock, and make sure you click Welsh Second Language. So diolch yn fawr. Remember to come to the session next week, and always type in the chat if you have any final questions, and we'll be going over giving advice and comparing opinions.